Hello, everyone. It's the think tank. It must be Sunday. It must be 7 o'clock. I hope everybody is doing well. Um, kind of a somber day around here, as I know some of you already know. That I was alerted this morning. I can tell all of you because this is very private. That Kelly Bruce, who was the guest for the Brian Schaefer episode earlier this year, and I've known her for quite a while. She keeps tabs on anything going on in disappearances in Ohio, and she was the one this morning who sent me a message saying that Katie Lancaster had died yesterday. And just, of course, put me in a very bad mood. And that mood continues till now. I had to play through it today in disc golf, and I did not play very well, which I don't think anybody's surprised by that. It's one of those things where, I don't think there's any foul play or anything, but maybe it was some sort of physical ailment or something that she had, but there was a lot going on in Katie's life, and she had 5 kids. Her marriage was not good, and she just had a lot of stuff going on. I'm not saying, I don't know. Like I said, there may have been certainly some physical event, medical event that caused it, but there was no foul play or anything like that. Could have been an overdose. It's hard. I just don't know. But that brings the number to 5. 5 guests of Unfound who are no longer with us. Those being Jessica Curtis, Tyler Stice's sister, Donna Jean Kapp, Dorianne Myers' sister, Janice Norwood, Kimberly Norwood's mother, Vicki Wilkerson, Jennifer Wilkerson's mother, and now Katie Lancaster, sister-in-law of Megan Lancaster. And, she's fought so hard since Megan went missing. Certainly was ecstatic when Mike Moran and others were charged with the crimes that they still have yet to stand trial for. But she was going through a lot. Once again, I don't know what happened. But she leaves behind 5 children, and her husband is in jail. So, these disappearances, they have tons of collateral damage. Tons. And I don't know what could say, Janice Norwood, Vicki Wilkerson, and Donna Jean Kapp, not young people. And of course, as we know with life, nobody gets out of here alive. But when it comes to Jessica Curtis and now Katie Lancaster, you have to believe that had Tyler not gone missing, had Megan not gone missing, that these 2 young women, Jessica and Katie, would still be with us. And, that doesn't even come in, and that's just with guests of the program, that we're not even counting all these other disappearances that we've covered where a family member who hasn't been on the program had something to happen. So it's bad. I got to know Katie. I get to know some guests better than others. Depends on the circumstances. But I thought I got to know Katie very well. I talked to her several times after she was on Unfound, and that goes way back to 2018. But I hadn't spoken to her for, in a while, although I did see that post that she made a few weeks ago. It was all in capital letters. Did catch my attention. Of course, I never could have thought this was going to happen. Once again, I don't know what happened. But, it hurts every time. And I did not meet any of these guests. All it just happened to be all women. I did not meet any of these women in person. And it's still, and it's going to always be this way. That when a guest does pass away, there's always going to be that. I know for me, a feeling of failure. And maybe just coincidentally, the 5 guests who have passed away are all 5 that I got to know fairly well. I spoke to Jessica Curtis just days before she committed suicide. I kept in contact with Janice Norwood. I talked to her when her husband, Kimberly's father, died. Donna Jean Kapp, I talked to her for 2.5 years before she appeared on the program. And then she died just a few months after she was on the program in 2019. Vicki Wilkerson, I can still hear her voice. Even though she lived, she lived in New Mexico, but she had like a southern drawl as if she lived in Alabama or something. And now Katie, who, and just, like I said, this is something that I, goes along with doing this, getting to know these people, getting to know them so well. And, I guess it had been a little while. I mean, the thing is, since the beginning of Unfound, Jessica died in October of 2018. So it was over 2 years before we had our first guest death. And since then, though, in the last 3 years, we've had 4. So I don't, I guess that's like 1 per year. So I guess I'm supposed to suspect that at least one, we're going to have a death, at least 1 death per year of a guest. So I, it's just horrible, just really bad. It just was puts me in a very bad mood, as they all have. And, so what's going to happen with Megan, who's going to represent her out there in the public? Of course, Katie always did all of the interviews and everything. She was the one that gave the police chief a hard time. She talked about being thrown in jail because of that and everything. Who's going to do that now? No. And yes, I did say that her husband is in jail. That is Megan's brother. And he's there because he had been abusive to Katie. So she had a lot going on. So, but I just wanted to fill you all in a little bit more. Of course, I just posted it. I posted it as soon as I got home today from the disc golf tournament. I got home a little after 5:00 Eastern time. But it was on my mind all day during the round. And one of the guys that in my group, the group that I was playing with today, actually listens to the program. And I think you could tell something was up. I didn't want to burden him with that for the round, because, he had his own, round to play. But right before the end, like with about 3 baskets left, is kind of when I told him what was going on with me. So he started at the beginning. He just got into the program recently, and He hasn't gotten to Megan's yet. I think he's still like in 2017 somewhere. So, all right. All right, who's in here? I just wanted to say that, and of course, I'll be talking about more about this on Wednesday night. Maybe I'll know a little bit more information. I don't even know how much I'll say, but of course, I will be talking about it. Hello, Eileen, Charlotte, Linda, CR. Good to see you, Paula, Kathy. Good to see all of you, and Jill getting in there. Thank you, Jill. Delane. Thanks everybody for showing up, and also thank you for um, tuning into the Unfound on the Ground this past Monday as well. Linda, Ed, you're not a failure. Please pass every day, and you go get it. Well, I appreciate that, Linda. I tell every one of these guests that they can call me anytime, and in fact, even with the interview that I did on Friday evening, that'll be for this coming Friday. I was exchanging emails with the guest like at 4 a.m. last week or something. And once again, because I get to know these people so well, that it hurts. Under the whatever things are going on. Once again, I'm not sure exactly what happened with Katie. I hope it is not something of a planned nature. I'm hoping this was some type of accident or something like that, and not something that was planned. But when I tell them that, this is what I'm talking about. I can, as all of you know, when it comes to the emotional part of my life, I don't have a lot going on. I have a father who lives 1,300 miles away. But other than that, I have pretty broad shoulders for these things. I don't have any kids. I don't have a girlfriend and things. Those things that obviously can add complexity to a person's life. And, so I feel prepared to help these people, when they're going through dark times and everything. And so when something like this happens, I just wonder, was I clear enough, with her on that? So there you go. So let's move on to the disappearance of Kevin Nguyen. Now, you should know. I watched several videos, local Fort Wayne, Indiana TV videos about his disappearance, and they all pronounced his last name Nguyen or something. But Brett and I decided that, he believed that they wanted to pronounce Nguyen, which is the way I always thought that last name was pronounced. So if anybody was wondering about that, we've had some names on the program where it was always a little bit of a question mark. So I had to figure out what we were going to do with that. Delane, given that the show's average disappearance is 18 years, we're going to experience some deaths. So I guess that's true, Delane. I guess it's one of those things, Delane, where I understand if the guests who are passing away are, 70 years old, 75 years old, 80 years old. Once again, none of us get out of here alive. But when it comes to Jessica Curtis, how old was she? 20s, early 30s. Katie in her 30s. You start thinking about what could have been done to prevent it. And being that I am a person who interacted with them on a very, very personal level, I have to think about that. Yeah, it's been. Thank you. Okay, for regarding the last name, Eileen. Thank you. So we have this disappearance, and so Katie Lancaster, I hope you rest in peace, and we will. I will be talking about you again on Wednesday, of course, in very positive terms. All right, so let's move on to Kevin's disappearance. This is one of those disappearances where I can tell you right now, I think probably the discussion group is going to absolutely believe that somebody murdered him. But I have a feeling that in here, we're going to probably come to once again, we'll get to this at the end. Don't want to jump to the end right now. But it does, as soon as I hear like a disappearance like this, it's like after 5 years, you get a feeling for these type of things. As soon as you hear of a particular type of disappearance, you're like, yep, I bet it's going to be split decision on this one. So as you know, I like to start with the very general and then get to the very specific. But you should know, if you saw the points to ponder, we're not going to be finishing with your theories tonight. We're going to talk about a small topic after that. But have you ever witnessed a really bad bar fight? Because this is kind of where this whole disappearance kind of starts with Kevin. He's in there. A bunch of other people are there. We know that fights in bars are happening all the time. Why? Because people are getting drunk, probably maybe doing a couple drugs here and there. Couples going there. They're getting in a fight. Some guy tries to hit on some guy's wife, or some woman tries to, whatever sexuality, I'm not here to get into that, but you know what I mean. And things happen. I can tell you, I don't have a lot of experience with bar fights because really did not go to them, have not gone to them over the course of my life. I can remember back in high school, we used to go to this under 21 club called Fantasy Rock in Lower Burl. And I remember seeing a fight there, but only once. So when it comes to those types of places, I just really never got into going to a place like that. Even in college, we went to some bars and things, but I can't ever remember anything crazy happening. So this is where I want to start this, because I'm guessing some of you probably do have some experience maybe you're even in a bar fight yourself, which might be interesting to hear about. But this is where this all starts. So I want to know what kind of experience you have in this area. Have you ever witnessed a really bad bar fight? Please explain. Kathy says no. Jill says yes, it was my hobby in my drunk days. Wow, Jill. Okay. Linda says never saw a bar fight. Jill says I did not fight. I had other priorities. Okay. Charlotte, my daughter worked as a barmaid once a long time ago, and I was there one night and a fight broke out. She took control of the situation quickly, and then the police got here. Wow. You got a brave daughter, Charlotte. Eileen says, no, I've only seen shouting arguments. Some have moved outside, but I didn't follow them out. CR says no. CR's like me. Paula, no, not terrible. One guy went to the hospital for stitches, several broken chairs, and glasses. My brother Brian got into a fight at a bar one time. I think he got sucker hit with a beer bottle across his head, and still it's like a dent or something on that area of his skull. Happened decades and decades ago. But I think we really need to understand that if we are to think that, of course, and you should know, in interviewing Brett, that I really tried to keep down the rumors and all that stuff as much as I could. There are many, many stories that are unproven about that night. Kevin sneaking back in 4 times, Of course, he might have mentioned him being in the women's restroom, all of these things. And it's hard for me to make sense if it's all true, partially true, or so. I tried to keep it to a minimum, but on the other hand, I tried to give you a little bit of a flavor of what has been said over the last almost 3 years as well. So I guess what we're saying here, okay, Jill says, I saw a guy get knocked out and turned into an uproar of all the friends fighting. Jill, he broke his jaw, but honestly, he kind of deserved it. Dealt with a sorority sister of mine. Wow. Okay. So we have a little bit of experience. There seems like Jill is making up maybe for the rest of us. But I guess what we're saying is that, if we are to believe that, things really went on in there, it just doesn't sound to me like and I guess maybe we even have to delineate between a regular bar fight between patrons and a bar fight between a patron and a bouncer, or a patron and an employee, or somebody like that. I guess there could be a couple different kinds of the definition of a bar fight. So let's just all keep that in mind regarding bar fights and what we've witnessed and maybe what we haven't witnessed. And because, truthfully, had I allowed all of the rumors about that night to make it into the interview, and Brett knew, of course, we weren't going to do that, you would have thought that the brass rail was in the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. I mean, seriously, if you've seen that movie. That's how crazy it made it sound on that particular night. And that's why the episode was called The Telephone Game. Jill says, I've been kicked out of my fair share of bars. Different interaction entirely. Okay, Jill. So, all right. Have you ever witnessed a really bad bar fight? For the most part, no. Maybe Jill has. Maybe she's even been in one. But maybe our total overall experience in this area is a little bit lacking. So let's move on to this. This is once again another general question. We only usually have one, but I wanted to put another one in here. Have you ever experienced hypothermia? Please explain. How did that happen? Because I think we have to look at that in this disappearance. We're certainly going to look at the foul play angle, but we need to look at the mental health, physical health angle of this disappearance as well. Have you ever experienced hypothermia? Or maybe we could even go out, if you haven't, maybe somebody close to you experienced them having hypothermia, and anything like that. For me, I will tell you that I think I did experience hypothermia once. And it was under the most unique conditions. Let's see. Eileen says no. Sierra says no. Jill says no. I'm from the desert. Charlotte, no. Delane, gosh, no. Linda, I helped a neighbor with hypothermia, but I've not had it myself. Well, if Linda, if you could tell us a little bit about that neighbor. What was going on there? How did that happen? I'd like to hear. Kathy says, no, my family moved away from Idaho Falls to California when I was 8. Lowest temperature in Idaho Falls was 45 below. Oh, my gosh. Yes, Linda, if you could maybe expound on that. What did you notice from this neighbor? What was going on there? How did it happen? For me, I think that I had hypothermia 19 years ago when I was taking a scuba diving class. We were out at Lake Mead, and we dove down, and we were on the bottom of the lake, which really, of course, it's losing water and all that stuff. But this was summer of 2002, so 19 years ago. And I remember us being on the bottom. There were like 5 of us and the instructor. We're all sitting there on the bottom, and we're doing these different skills and everything. And I can remember these my body started to shivering. Now, we had been down there for a while, and even though it's Las Vegas in the summer, you get down to the bottom, the light's not getting down there. The water is actually can get kind of cold down there. And some of the people had wetsuits, which will keep you warm. I did not. And even though we went back up to the surface and went to shore, I'm pretty sure there was a point, had we been down there any longer, that the coldness of the water would have overtaken me. Pretty sure. It was really weird. These spots were like coming up in front of my mask, and I could feel my body starting to shiver. And then we went to the surface, and of course, when we get up there, it's like 100 degrees or something, and then that went away pretty fast. But so I do know a little bit about it. Linda says, I found her in the snow. She fell out of her wheelchair and tried to crawl to a neighbor's house. Oh my gosh. Delane, my uncle did have to have a few toes amputated due to being drunk and sleeping outside. Linda, she had been in the snow for at least an hour. No one knew she was there. She was not dressed for the snow. Oh my gosh, Linda. So she lived? Did she recover? She was very tired, confused, and I know she had a bit of a drinking problem. Well, okay. So Linda certainly had, okay, she lived. Okay, Linda. So Linda certainly does have hypothermia experience. Sound like maybe Delane does a little bit too. Good for you, Linda. You saved that woman's life. Good for you. All right, so very small experience with bar fights, and we have very little experience with hypothermia, although Linda's experience is certainly kind of what we're talking about here, possibly in Kevin's. So let's get right to now the more specific points to ponder. Your best assessment, and I know this is difficult, from what you heard in the interview, in the episode, was Kevin acting strangely that night, or are people just gossiping, or is there really no way to tell? Now, you should know, once again, I can say this here, but this is something that, of course, we could never talk about in an interview, and I would not. I may, the blog, by the way, the Patreon blog is about 2,000 words in. I'm going to finish it tonight, but I really don't know if I'm going to mention this or not. But, Kevin's family is open to the idea that he got slipped some drug or something like that because they've heard that he was acting strangely. These women said that he was irritating them. And even I, when I did get to talk to Kevin's grandmother, her name is Dee. I even, told her, and she even laughed, that I said, you know what? I'm sure some women that have known me said I was irritating. That doesn't mean I was acting strangely. Maybe they were just bitches. I told her that. So once again, your best assessment, was Kevin acting strangely that night, or are people just gossiping, or is there really no way to tell? Linda was getting home. Wow, you're very fortunate. Jill, depends the people who stayed it. Maybe the girl who found him in the bathroom. Okay. The bar has to cover their butt. Yeah, Kathy, he was intoxicated per the surveillance video at 2:45 a.m. Maybe he also took some drugs. CR, since his behavior was out of the norm, perhaps he drank too much too fast on an empty stomach or while sleep deprived. Charlotte, it sounded to me like he was slipped some drugs in his drink. So, Charlotte, you're okay. That's great. Paula, I think there's been way too much blown out of proportion. CR, or maybe he took some medication no one knows about that. Interacted with the booze. CR, I think you make a good point too. This is one of those things. Once again, Was it the movie Rashomon by Kurosawa? There's been some other movies that have done this as well. There was even an X-File episode that was like this, that had David Arquette in it, where the story is told from different points of view, and every person assesses the situation and everything differently. Even though they were all in the same room at the same time, they all took something different away from it. It very well may be, I guess what's on top of everything else, Kevin had been here before, so it very well may be that, enough people knew him being there that they might have known what to predict from him, having known him, his personality. And so I guess they might be able to make an accurate assessment of him that night if they knew him, from before. Whereas if they didn't know him at all, maybe, it might be a little bit more of a question mark. I think Jill makes a good point. It all depends on who's saying what. If it was a woman if he really was in the bathroom, the women's bathroom, then I guess that woman would be right. What is a guy doing in a woman's bathroom? Certainly. Once again, though, the problem is people view things in different ways. So really, there might not be any way to tell. I think that Delane says, I thought about his drink getting dosed, but no way to tell if they won't come forward and give their name. Linda, I think he may have been slipped something, not his normal behavior. Eileen, yes, for me, him going back to the bar shows he wasn't acting normally. Jill, if he wasn't typically a problem at bars, it sounds like there was another mitigating factor. Linda says, who hides in a lady's bathroom? Once again, this is one of those things that I know it was stated. You wouldn't think that somebody would make something like that up. But, I have to admit for myself that I wonder if that's true or not. That's just for me. You want to believe it? That's fine. I'm not trying to change your mind. Jill, I have hid in a kitchen drunk. It happens. Or he drank more to get the courage to talk to the artist. Yeah. Paul, I've ended up in the wrong bathroom before, so no judgment for me. I don't know. I have to admit, I did use a women's bathroom over in Orlando at a park once because the men's bathroom was all busy. I think Charlotte says, I think the witnesses were exaggerating. Linda, if his normal behavior is to sit quietly and have a drink, why would he be fighting, keep returning, hiding for what purpose? Can't get drinks in there. Yeah, Linda. I think what we have to, and I think all of that's possible. It very well may be that he was acting strangely. It could be, the problem we have with this, we all have it. We all have a problem with trying to assess something like this. Jill says, Brass Rail seems to be a smaller, rowdier bar. My guess regulars cover the bar's back. Could be. But I think what's important here in making an assessment like this, we can't forget that all of these people are being talked to after they already know Kevin is missing. And so this could bring in confirmation bias. Well, they know that he went missing. And so then they start probing their minds and trying to find a cause for it. And so something that they thought was no big deal at the time, now they're looking back, well, then everything becomes accentuated. And maybe if he hadn't gone missing, that, if somebody else will ask them, well, was Kevin Nguyen acting strangely that night? They'd say no, but because he went missing, they think, oh yeah, he kind of was, now that I think about it. This is a big problem for any type of investigator in anything. Because people know why you're there. If it's a murder, if it's a rape, if it's a disappearance, if it's a car wreck, or anything else, they already know why the investigator's asking the questions. And then the memory starts to change a little bit. So I think we always have to remember that in these situations where people then suddenly start saying, oh, yeah, the missing person was acting strangely. Very well could be. Very well could be, but it's a tough part of doing investigations. Kathy says, I read that the Brass Rail is a low-class CD bar. Okay, Kathy. Jill, we also have to recognize that most of them were under the influence as well. That's right. Yes. Yes, people too tend to exaggerate, Delane says. They do. It's a tough part of the investigation process. And I know that I will be talking about this in these presentations that are in the upcoming month regarding confirmation bias when it comes to talking to witnesses about anything, because they already know a person's been murdered. And so instinctually, most people want to be helpful. In fact, some people are so helpful, they start lying about seeing missing people. We know that. So we just have to remember that. You very well maybe Kevin was absolutely 100% acting strangely. He was being an a-hole. He was irritating women. He was going into the bathroom and everything else. But we also have to remember that these stories are coming from people who already know he's missing, because that's why they were being talked to. Linda, it seems abnormal for someone not a usual drunk to keep going back to a bar they were kicked out of. That's true. We're going to get to that. Thank you, Linda. Eileen agrees. Delane, his dad said that they never drank much when they have parties. Well, we're going to get to that, Delane. We're going to get to that. It's a very interesting. I'm glad you brought it up, Delane. Thank you. So the best assessment, I think some of you saying he could have been slipped something that night, which means he could have been acting strangely. Some of you say, well, we just don't know. And, I think I may be in the camp of there's really no way to tell. Right, Delane. I won't drink too much when family's present like older adults. Right. All right. So let's move on to the next point to ponder. Is there anything you heard in the interview to understand why a bouncer would have gotten into a fight with Kevin? Note, the manager has admitted that a bouncer did take Kevin to the ground. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there was a fight. Punches back and forth and everything. But there was a text seemingly that the manager sent out to Kevin's family saying, yes, that on the night that one of his bouncers did have to take Kevin to the ground. So once again, is there anything you heard in the interview to understand why a bouncer would have had to have done that? And I'll even add in something else. If Kevin was really this bad and all these people and the bouncer were all having problems with him going in the women's restroom and everything, why didn't anybody ever call the cops? Think about that. So once again, is there anything you heard in the interview to understand why a bouncer would have gotten into a fight with Kevin? Note, the manager has admitted that a bouncer did take Kevin to the ground, which once again, in my belief, is a little different than a fight. It could have been Kevin's doing something and the bouncer, big fella, just kind of throws him to the ground, holds him there, and is like, hey, what are you doing? You're getting out of here. That's not, to me, a fight. A fight is when punches are thrown and everything else. The manager has never admitted to that. CR says, I think he was just annoyed by him. Kathy, Kevin probably said something smart to the bouncer. Charlotte, it seemed excessive force to me. Jill, been there, done that. It's to distract and isolate the drunk. Jill, because bars are known to have other nefarious behavior, it is seedy bar. They believe they can't take care of themselves. Eileen, agree with Kathy. Maybe he was being annoying and mouthy. Charlotte, could have been that he was invited to the bar and it was set up for someone to do something to him. All right. Charlotte's going in the conspiracy direction. Jill, if you get too many police reports at bars, you can lose your liquor license. That's true. So, yeah, they might be motivated to just handle things in-house. Okay. Delane, I've seen bouncers do that, but generally it's when someone is resisting them. Yes. Linda, I would think the bouncer was trying to control him from hurting someone or himself. Yeah. Paula, taking him to the ground could have been to make him understand he needs to leave. Kevin could have been mouthy. Yeah. Eileen, I think the bar bouncer just thought this didn't warrant calling cops, figured they'd kick him out and be done. Because once again, there's just certain things that I wasn't going to allow into the interview because there's just no proof of them. And you know me, I don't like to spin off into theory land and all sorts of postulations and corollaries and addendums. But there is a story out there that Kevin got back into the bar 4 times after he got kicked out. So it seems a little unbelievable to me. I mean, obviously, if he maybe got kicked out, King somehow got back in, then we can maybe understand why a fight or something could have happened. What we also don't know, unfortunately, is how often are people getting kicked out of the brass rail? Of course, we know of this other murder of a patron, a guy who was at the brass rail one night and then ended up being murdered, but I don't think it had anything to do with the brass rail. But it would be helpful to know how many times they have to kick people out. I don't know how you'd ever find that out, though. Charlotte says, if you kept coming back over and over, why didn't they call the cops? That's kind of my point. And I get what Jill said. Well, they don't want to call the cops. You could lose your liquor license. But I think under these particular situation where a patron just won't take no for an answer, I think the police would understand that. That's not on the bar. That's on that person. Now, if there are bar fights happening in a place all the time, or there's illegal activity going on there and all sorts of things we know, then I can get it. But if some guy just won't take no for an answer, you'd think. CR, was he planning on driving home drunk or buzzed? Well, he got dropped off, CR. There was no plan for him to drive. He didn't drive at all. He got dropped off and he was supposed to be picked up, and we're going to get to that, CR. Jill, usually if you get kicked out, you get babysat until your ride comes. My guess is he said he had to pee and they got to let him go. You seem to know a lot about this, Jill. Thank goodness you're in the think tank tonight. 4 times is excessive, CR says. Delane, yeah, I find it hard to believe he got back in after getting kicked out in the first time. Right. Paula, I had wondered if people didn't see him leave and he was just going to the food truck and his reentry was confused with that. And see, that is a discussion that Brett and I got into. Once again, I didn't want to get into every single rumor and everything. It's just unproven things and everything else. But like I said to Brett, it was like, who was counting? Well, he snuck into the bar 4 times. Well, who counts that? Is there somebody at the door just seeing him going in? They see him getting kicked out and he comes back. Oh, kicked out once, kicked out twice, kicked out. That's one of those things where he got kicked out 4 times. Oh my gosh. But then at some point you have to start thinking, who's keeping track of that? And if somebody's keeping track of that, why isn't that person saying something and keeping Kevin from coming back in? So once again, this could be, as like I said, the telephone game. Paula says, I had wondered if people didn't see him leave and he was just going to the food truck. Okay. Linda, kicked out 4 times. It's a small place. How many entrances and bouncers are there? It's not a very big place. Jill says Allen County loves to shut down bars. To my knowledge, the brass rail has never been shut down. It seems like it's been around for quite a while. So they must be doing something right. Paula, our overserving could have been why they didn't want the cops called. It could be, but we know what his bill was. It didn't sound like it was over-serving to me, but 4 times is excessive. Yes, Sierra says. Jill, probably collection when interviews because of the text. Delane, if he kept going out to get food, it doesn't seem like he could have gotten that intoxicated in 2 hours. It goes back to what some of you brought up before. Is it possible that he could have been slipped something? And I want you to know that that is something that I think the family really, really, really 90% believes. I'm not convinced of it, but that is something that came up when the discussions with Brett. So once again, we don't do any theorizing on the program. Linda, if something doesn't seem right, I'm always told follow the money. Okay. So once again, is there anything you heard in the interview to understand why a bouncer would have gotten into a fight with Kevin? Note, the manager has admitted that a bouncer did take Kevin to the ground. So it's one of those things. Well, if he was acting strangely, if he really was in the women's bathroom and these things, I guess we could understand why a bouncer would do something to Kevin. A fight, though, is a little hard to understand. Bouncers are not supposed to fight people, but hey, maybe that's what happened, but it very well may be that this is how things get exaggerated. The manager says that Kevin got just taken to the ground, whereas everybody else is watching. To them, it looks like a fight. Okay. How much was the tab? I thought it was $30 some, Joe. Yeah, there we go, Kathy. Let's move on to this. Being that we know that there are 2 videos, once again, him in the 1:30 to 2 a.m. walking past this Arby's. And then once again, between 2:30, like an hour later, 2:30 to 3 a.m., once again, walking past the same Arby's, the same camera on the same side of the street. Why would Kevin leave the bar, then come back many minutes later? We are to believe the one thing that's consistent is that he did get kicked out of this bar for something. So we see this video of him walking away from the bar, not far away, 400 feet, 500 feet, pretty close, walking away from the bar. But we do know that he did somehow come back to the bar. It doesn't seem, though, it was past that camera. He came back some other way. Then he calls, and we know that because he called for a ride. And then about that time that ride was showing up, there he is walking past the camera again. Why would Kevin leave the bar, then come back many minutes later? What are the things that come to mind? And as I said, if you watch the YouTube video, for example, if it was because he was cold, knew the area, had to know the area, had been to the brass rail many times before. He grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, knew all of that, was going to school, everything else. He had to know that hospital, which surely has an emergency room, is like a block to the west of where that Arby's is. If he was cold, just run over there, get inside. I don't know how long you're going to be allowed to stay in there, but he could have called from there and got picked up there. Instead, his mother showed up at the brass rail. So once again, why would Kevin leave the bar, then come back many minutes later? You know, It also occurs to me, this is one of those facts that if we didn't have the video of it, I don't know if we'd believe it. If we just had one video at 1:30, and then there were people who said, "Oh yeah, he came back at 2:30," I don't know if we would believe that. We might think, well, maybe they're getting their times mixed up or something. But we do have video that he was walking from the direction of the brass rail an hour later. Surprising. Jill says $30. That's like nothing. Okay. I don't even know what drinks and everything are cost these days. I have no idea. I drink Publix diet iced tea. Jill, Delane, bouncers can be held liable. That's sure. Excessive force. That surely is true, Delane. Linda says, did they say he was drinking? That was what was on his bill, Linda. They checked his bill, and that was what was on there. Jill, he was expecting a ride, probably walking back to get his ride. Linda, mixed drinks are more expensive than a beer. $30 is a small tab. Bar was familiar to him. That's true, CR. We have to, thank you for reminding us that this was not his first time there. I'm not saying it was like Cheers when Norm walked in, but he had been there before. At least 5 or 6 times. Charlotte, maybe he wanted to try to see the woman who invited him to the bar. Kathy, who knows? An inebriated person can do most anything. Sometimes irrational, depends on how drunk the person is. Linda, alcohol gives you the feeling of being warm when you are cold. Jill, probably walking to see if he could catch up to Mom before she got to the bar to avoid more harassment from the bouncer potentially. The thing is, Jill, is that he called, for a ride well after he was seen on the video the first time. And we have to remember to walk home, at least under normal conditions and normal weather, it's like an hour and a half walk. So, he's seen at the 140 something point on the video. And then an hour later, he seen him on the same exact video going the same direction. Well, if he'd have just kept walking the first time, he would have been very close to home at 2:40 in the morning. I have to remember that. Delane, if he was drinking beer, it seems like $30 was quite a few beers. I think it was 2 beers and 2 mixed drinks, I think, is if I remember correctly. Eileen, the only thing that makes sense to me is he forgot something or lost something on the way, but I feel like something wasn't right. Well, that's where the glasses come in. Maybe that was. He was walking, but then how could he forget that he didn't have his glasses? That maybe. Linda could be, though. Certainly, he could have been going back for something else. Linda, reason to go back, left behind coat or wallet or glasses, wanted to talk to someone, trying to apologize. Just a few reasons I could think of. Linda, Delane, that's why I wonder what he's drinking. A mixed drink can be $10+. Yeah. Eileen says, I feel like he kept going back because it was familiar. Kathy, we don't know how well he tolerated alcohol. Did he black out? Not that ever came up in any conversation I had, Kathy. Paula, maybe he just had nowhere else to go. Well, if he would have, like I said before, if he would have just kept walking in the direction he was going and he knew how to walk home, by the time he was seen the second time at 2:40, had an hour before he just kept going in that direction and walking home, he would have almost been home by then. But it does bring up the other point that if he was outside that entire hour from 1:40 to 2:40, even if he did walk back to the bar and couldn't get in, and he was really not dressed for the elements, and I think we have to remember that. Linda, could he have just had an allergic reaction to mixing his beverage? It could be. The thought that comes to my mind, nobody's mentioned it here, and once again, I think those are a lot of good possibilities. We're trying to attach a logical reason to something that doesn't seem very logical, and we've all talked about this before. We don't know what's going on in Kevin's mind. We're trying to assess it almost 3 years later. We didn't know him. None of us really know the area. We've already talked about, very unfamiliar with bar fights or hypothermia and all of this stuff. But we're giving it our best shot here. I start wondering, did he walk back to the bar because, in walking away, once again, maybe this is something that a guy might understand better. Is that, after he got kicked out, his ego's been bruised. I got kicked out. And he's walking away and he decides to circle back because he's still pissed off. Okay, well, yeah, you maybe kick out, but then he wanted to go back for more. And maybe this could be where, the additional fights or the bouncer throwing him to the ground or putting him on the ground occurred. That's what occurs to me. We've heard about these things before. Two people get in a fight. One gets kicked out of work, or a student gets kicked out of school or something. And then what happens? The person, the guy, usually it's a guy, comes back with a gun. And once, because he got his butt kicked the first time around, he wants to get even, or even more so. So this is what occurs to me. Of course, we know that didn't happen because then we saw another video of him walking once again away from the Arby's. So, but this is what, when I heard about the videos and Brett and I talked about them, that's what occurs to me. That he got kicked out. He's marching away, stomping away, he's ticked off. And at some point he said, I'm not letting those people get the best of me. I'm turning back and going to try to see if I can get back in there, whatever. That's what comes to mind. But I think all of you brought up some really good points too. Jill says, so I'm looking at his FBI page. He had a joint in his ear. What's his other drug use look like? It didn't really come up, Jill. Delane, yeah, an hour in the cold could have him beginning to get confused. Linda, so possible concussion? Certainly possible. Have to remember, Linda, that Shane Fell was mentioned in the episode after a car wreck. I'm still very open to that idea in his disappearance. Kathy, alcohol intensifies and distorts situations. Jill, concussion, great thought. Yeah, Linda, yeah. Yeah, I can't get around the concussion possibility as well. So once again, why would Kevin leave the bar then come back many minutes later? A lot of possibilities. Maybe he got cold. Maybe forgot something. Maybe he wanted to go for a second round with one of the bouncers. A lot of different possibilities. Maybe he was confused. Different possibilities. But the thing is, we have to remember this. No matter what happened, he had enough wherewithal, mentality that an hour later, he was on the same street walking. So he wasn't confused to the point where he didn't know where he was. Have to keep that in mind. Eileen, we did talk about this in Chance Engelbert's case too. I feel like for some people, they could get angry as they think and walk, whereas others walk off their emotions. Yes, right, Eileen. We did talk about this with Chance. He got so ticked off and he started walking off, into the point where, we're open to the idea maybe he really thought that he was going to walk the whole way back to Wyoming. And I've kind of made that point with my own theory in the on the Patreon blog, and then doing the video for that particular disappearance. It all seems to line up to me. Somebody might look at it differently, but yes, some people do walk off their anger, and some people, the more they walk, the angrier they get. Delane says it could have been a culmination of several things that caused him to be confused. Yeah. And this is just like, once again, we have to be open to Crystal Morrison's situation, even though it's at the other extreme. The fact is, if it's a 65-degree day in North Carolina instead of 100 degrees, Crystal Morrison's probably still around. Maybe something else happens to her down the line, but she doesn't disappear and die that day. Okay. We're not getting to that yet, Jill. All right, let's move on to this. Why did Kevin call for a ride? And we're going to be talking about this at the end. We're going to come back to this topic in more general terms. Why did Kevin call for a ride, then leave right around the time his mother got there? We will come back to this. Because there's a lot of things we can debate regarding, how many fights that he got into. Did he find different ways to get back into the bar, on and on and on. And we have to take third person accounts and everything. But there are some things we cannot deny. And that is that we know the time that he's seen on the video. We know the time that his mother showed up. And they are very, very close to each other. So why would Kevin call for a ride? Remember, he called his sister. Sister was in bed, or, it's like, what was it? 2 and something in the morning. And then she, for some reason, called her mother, I guess, told her mother, and the mother said, no, don't, I'll go pick him up. Mother picks him up. She goes there. He's nowhere to be seen. She asks. He's not there. She tries calling. He's not picking up. But at the same time, we know that he was down the street walking away from the restaurant by the Arby's. Why did Kevin call for a ride, then leave right around the time his mother got there? And once again, we're going to come back to this because this obviously is a thing in disappearances. Now, we got to talk about it with Deborah Bowman's, but, being that we've never done a think tank on Crystal Morrison or Shane Fell, I want to come back to this topic just once again in a little more general terms before we're done tonight. Why did Kevin call for a ride, then leave right around the time his mother got there? It could have been a call. Okay, Jill, I'm going to be that person. Kathy, I drove 5 miles when I got the DUI in 1977, and I don't remember all of the drive blackout. Wow, Kathy. Maybe he wanted to get away from the bar itself. Paula, he didn't have a grasp of how much time had gone by and just got impatient and left, or he regretted calling for a ride. Linda, maybe he didn't want his mother to see him drunk, felt the shame. It's Paula, I think you make it's interesting you talk about time. Maybe just once again, he was waiting, and nobody showed up. Said the heck with it. But I would, but once again, how I love to play devil's advocate in these think tanks. Would he not then call again, though? If he was waiting, would he not call again? And there's no record of that. There's nothing that I've heard that ever happened. So you very well be right, but then we have to think about, well, why is it not rational, logical that he would have called again? Okay, but certainly possible. Maybe he wanted to get away from the bar itself. Kathy, certainly possible. Then the issue is, though, there's a reason his mother showed up at the bar, because that's where she thought he was. Why did he not say, you know what, pick me up at the Arby's down the street? Didn't do that. Linda says, if he called his sister but mom showed up, he may have walked away from her. Okay, Linda. Charlotte, maybe he was just too disoriented to know what he was doing. I think that is very possible, Charlotte. I think, we got a lot of factors going on. And once again, this is the reason I brought up Crystal Morrison's disappearance, because we've never had a chance to talk about her disappearance, and I'm going to do a little bit about that at the end. Eileen, I think the cold and possible concussion had him confused. I imagine 5 minutes of cold could feel a lot longer. Paula, no, I think he would have been mad because in his mind, they just didn't show up. All right, so that's your counter to the idea that he would call again. Maybe he was just so ticked off that he didn't want to call again. Thought he got stood up. Okay. Delaney wouldn't have known that his mother versus sister was picking him up. That is true, Delaney. And Kathy says, remember, he was not sober. Thank you for reminding us, Kathy. That is also true. So once again, we're oftentimes when we do these think tanks, we are asked to try to attach logic to situations that seem illogical to us. Now, once again, in the moment, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on that night at the Brass Rail, Kevin walking away the second time, even though he knew he called for a ride, for some reason seemed illogical to him. Charlotte, did they find his cell phone or get his cell phone records? No, the cell phone is also missing. And the phone records, they're a little bit of a question mark, Charlotte, that I really can't get into this point. Brett and I tried to cover them, but there was just something in a discussion that I had with Kevin's grandmother regarding that I just don't think I can talk about right at this second. But it's safe to say that the final call, text or call was to the sister. No contact after that. And as we know, the mother tried calling him, calling, and he didn't pick up. Linda, unless sister and mother had different cars. Okay. So once again, why did Kevin call for a ride and leave right around the time? Maybe he was disoriented. Maybe he just got ticked off because maybe it took so long for somebody to show up. Maybe he didn't want to be drunk in front of his mother. Those are all possibilities. And once again, it may be none of those. It may really be that something was going on in his mind that he just couldn't figure this all out. He would have been outside at that point in that degree weather for quite a while, not dressed for the elements, might have had a concussion, and just the physical exertion out there. A lot of things going on. So, but I have to tell you, my choice would be, there's a reason he called his sister to pick him up and he didn't call his mother. There's a reason. It's easier to be drunk and or high in front of a sibling than it is in front of your mother, especially when you're living with her. And I have to admit that I voiced the opinion to Brett that I think the reason he walked off is because he was waiting there and actually did see his mother pull up and saw it was her and was like, I'm not getting in the car with her. I called my sister to pick me up, not my mother. And I know I'm a little this and I know I'm a little that. And so I'm going to just take off and try to walk home instead. And then that's the reason he doesn't take any of her calls. Because he knows as soon as he picks up, she's going to be like, well, where the hell are you? And then he's going to have to meet her. That's my reasoning. Very well could be something else. But I have to admit, in finding out about this for the first time, this was my reaction. Now, from an experience point of view, for me, it's tough to say that because it's tough to me to really relate to that because I've never been drunk. I've never even had a buzz in my life. I've never done any drugs or been high or anything like that. So when it comes to avoiding my parents, I don't have any experience in that particular area. But still, that's what came to my mind and looking at it and talking to Brett about it. Paula, so he wasn't so impaired that he couldn't think to call for a ride. That's where I get stuck with some of the other details. Right. I mean, he was clear enough thinking to know that he needed a ride. Right. He knew who to call, not Ghostbusters. Right. Kathy, we just don't know how rational or irrational he was. If you've never been intoxicated, it's hard to relate. Yeah, don't I know it? Jill, we might have to take culture into consideration here. Jill. How do you mean, Jill? Eileen, I could easily see that though my family dynamic is very different, my brothers would definitely call our mom before me. Eileen. Okay, Eileen, thank you for being honest about that. Um, Once again, it's just something that comes to mind. That, of course, we know in different families. Maybe it does depend on the culture. Asian culture, Black culture, uh, Irish Catholic culture. Uh, it just may depend. You know, yeah. So Linda says, I know in Asian families, the mother's usually the most feared and revered. Okay. It's Julie. Hello, Julie. Good to see you, Julie. I'm sorry I missed the start. Does anyone know if he was wearing his glasses in the Arby's video? Those videos are not very good, Julie. All they know is it's actually him. And I really, having watched the one video, you can't tell. It's, it's really high up. It's dark. It's at a weird angle. And, it has, all these videos have, this fisheye lenses where, somebody comes by and then they go really, it's like very circular, but everybody has decided that that is Kevin. So that's all right, Julie, for getting in late. You can go back and watch from the beginning. No, you can't tell. Okay. Speaking of the glasses, Julie coming in with a good question and then perfect timing, Julie. Good for you. The glasses weren't found until 10 days later. Anything weird about that? Anything suspicious? Anything that really, really sticks out to you regarding 10 days? Now, of course, they were broken, but they were in the parking lot. Very well could be that they dropped out or they just were fine and then a car ran over them and had them being broken has nothing to do with him going missing. So, once again, the glasses weren't found until over a week later. Anything weird about that? It is surprising. I have to tell you. Of course, they wouldn't know what he's missing. On the video, you can't tell if he's wearing his glasses or not. So they might not even know to look for them. So that's something that comes to mind. I think that they would just take for granted that he was wearing them when he went missing. Totally logical thought. That's not, obviously, that's not the fact, but it certainly makes sense to think that. Let's see. Those glasses did not get run over or stepped on. No. If a car ran over them, the broken lenses and arm should be nearby. Charlotte does think it's weird. Kathy, probably not. The back parking lot may have been not thoroughly searched until his glasses were found. Eileen, they could have gotten kicked from the side of the road or something to where you could see them. The glasses did not get run over or stepped on. You think, so what you're saying is, Delane, and maybe Linda's saying this too, is that if they had gotten stepped on or run over, that they would have been much more damaged than they were. Is that what you're saying? If that's not what you're saying, that's fine too. Just want to make sure I am understanding your thought correctly. Delane says, it looks to me like they may have been ripped from his face, either by someone else or him falling. Linda, did they ever ask the pizza dude if Kevin was wearing his glasses? I don't know. I don't know about that, Linda. Delane says, exactly. All right. So what you're saying is that if the glasses had been run over or stepped on, they would have been in much worse condition. Okay. Yes, broken pieces don't walk away. Julie G, I heard on the original they could have been caught by a snowplow. Then I start thinking of like Susie Lyle's disappearance, where they found her badge on the side of the parking lot, and they did believe that it had been in a pile of snow that had melted. That's what comes to mind. It's just So weird things that come to mind. The glasses weren't found until 10 days later. Anything weird about that? Charlotte says, just point blank, I think it is weird. Maybe somebody, Paula does not think that it is weird. Just hard to say. I lean toward, Linda says, yes, strange. I have to admit, I lean toward it not being strange or weird. Here's why. First of all, like I said before, somebody goes missing who wears glasses. I don't know how many people are really it's going to occur to them. Well, we need to find that person's glasses. I'm just going to take for granted the person is wearing his glasses. In addition, it's a little weird for me to believe that if there was something of a violent nature, foul play nature that happened back in the parking lot, that the perpetrators would really just leave his glasses there. They'd know that he was wearing them, or somebody would go put them there 10 days later. It feels more like a Columbo episode to me than real life. Once again, to me. We just don't know. They could, as maybe Delane is saying, Linda are saying here, is that just looks like maybe they came off his head when he got thrown to the ground. It very well may be that was the first time, and then he was coming back the second time, as maybe a few of you said. He was coming back to find his glasses, couldn't find them. Maybe because he couldn't, he couldn't, quote unquote, couldn't see without them. And I don't know how good his vision or bad his vision was without his glasses. I don't know. Linda says, if the sun was shining over those 10 days, they would have glared in the sun like broken glass. Strange they were right by a car tire. Just don't know. Obviously, people were going around after the word got out that Kevin was missing. But I guess I'm not saying we have to believe it, but I guess we have to be very open to the idea that Kevin being seen on those videos, he wasn't wearing his glasses. So he's trying to walk home, if that's what he was trying to do, without his glasses. Linda says Brett said he had bad vision and really couldn't see without his glasses. Yeah, I know, Linda. I know. Yeah. Right. But it seems that, it very well could be that after we see him on the video the second time, he went back again. And that's when he lost his glasses. The problem is we don't know when he lost his glasses. We don't know under what circumstances he lost his glasses. And we really don't know if he was really trying to walk home without his glasses. But for me, I just don't think that it's weird then for them to be in the parking lot 10 days later. Once again, when people disappear, people just take for granted, oh yeah, he must have had wearing his glasses, so there's no reason to look for them. And it also occurs to me of something of a foul play nature. It just seems a little too tricky to me. Somebody stepped on, oh, Kevin's missing. We did something to him. Now we're going to put his glasses there. Delane says, I don't see them being found by car tires being significant. Kathy, I could easily trip and fall outside, etc. if I didn't wear my glasses like Unique Harris. Yeah, she was another one who needed her glasses to see. Very good point, Kathy. So I think some of you are at least saying it's a little weird, but some of you are saying, no, it's not weird at all. Linda says, were the glasses near a dumpster? There was probably a dumpster around there somewhere, Linda, being that it was a bar, but the general belief is that it was in a parking lot. In the parking lot behind the bar, which you can look at on a map. It's not that big of a parking lot. All right, here we go. And once again, this is not going to be the final topic we have tonight, but it's time. Or I know I spent some time talking at the beginning about Katie Lancaster, so we didn't get started until about a quarter after, maybe. So, but we've been at this for an hour and 6 minutes. What happened to Kevin Nguyen? Foul play? Did somebody track him down after he was seen on Arby's the second time, and because of something that happened in the bar? Of course, I mentioned TJ Murray's. This is kind of very similar, like to his. Did he go back to the bar again after the second video and something happened there? Did he try to walk home and succumb to the elements and just he's still somewhere in the bushes somewhere in Fort Wayne, Indiana? Maybe he got lost, couldn't see, suffered from hypothermia, is outside in these very, very cold temperatures, doesn't have a proper jacket and gloves and all those things, and succumbs to the temperature. And he just, just like, what was it? Brian Barton. Some of you remember that disappearance. That was unsolved for like 10 years. And then a church ended up clearing some brush on the outskirts of its property. There he was, deceased. No foul play. Something like that. Did he go into the river? Smiley face killer style? What happened to Kevin Nguyen? Delane says, I think he stumbled, possibly fell, glasses fell off. Charlotte agrees with Delane. Paula says, no foul play, died out in the weather. CR says, accidentally drowned. Kathy says, fell into the closest river, either got lost or slipped, fell. Eileen, no foul play. I think he walked off, was confused, became disoriented, was overtaken by the elements and ended up in the water. Delane, I can't see even in the dark, even with street lights, so I'd never find my glasses in a parking lot. Kathy says Brian Barton was despondent, depressed. Yeah, it might have been a suicide, but I guess what the point I'm making, Kathy, is it wasn't like he was out in the middle of nowhere. He was right there. What was it? Federal Way, Washington. Is that where that occurred? And obviously he was in an area that people, I guess, thought no human could hide in, but Linda, no foul play. Charlene, he may have curled up somewhere and died and hasn't been found yet. Delane, I think it's another case of just not being found yet. I agree with all of you. As I'm writing right now, 225 disappearances into Unfound. We have a pretty good idea what foul play looks like. And we have to remember something. Julie says, oh no, am I the only one? I just never thought he would have left his glasses in the first place unless he was afraid. I think he went back and that made someone mad. Julie, perfectly fine to think that. No judgments here. It's totally fine. Don't feel bad about it. And it very well could be. If he could have gone away once and gotten back to the bar, just like he seemed he did the first time around, it very well may be. He went by the video again at 2:40 something, whenever it was, and then circled around again. Certainly possible. And it may have been to find his glasses and he ends up on the property and somebody does something to him. Certainly possible. I think we just have to remember is that his mother was there. His mother was waiting for him there. She didn't see anything suspicious. She ended up driving home, didn't see Kevin walking, all of these things. You just can't forget these points. But Julie, totally. Julie says kicked out 4 times, then came back. Julie, I talked about that a little earlier. We just have to, who is, as I have asked, and it's a rhetorical question, but it's kind of a serious question too. Who was counting? Who was counting these 4 times? It just seems like that's just a number to me. It just kind of feels like a number that was thrown out there. We came back like 4 times when maybe he only came back twice. I just don't know if there's somebody at the door like ticking off. Okay, it came back once, came back twice. Is there not other things to do? It's just something. It just sounds once again like the telephone game. But once again, I'm not. It's certainly possible that foul play, occurred. But I will tell you that that's not the conclusion that I've come to. And I think, being that others, kind of going in this direction, I think we have to think about this in some particular ways. It's hard to understand. I'm sure that Kevin Nguyen is not the first or last patron who ever acted up in that bar. There's that. I'm sure many people over the years have been kicked out of there more than once. But to my knowledge, there was the other guy who was a patron and then was murdered later. But if you read the articles and really get into that, it's pretty clear to me that the guy he was with did something to him. So what did Kevin do that was so unlike all of these other people who got kicked out, maybe more than once, and continued and didn't disappear? And then Kevin, who did disappear. This is always something that I try to think about. So there's that. The other point is that, as I was saying before, we know what foul play disappearances look like. And I've been going kind of back through, and I'm looking at all the disappearances that have been solved that we've covered. There are a few now, not enough, but a few. You can look at them. And in every one of them, where we thought that foul play was a factor, very, 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 very obvious, it was true. In the ones where we didn't think, or maybe it was like 50-50, wasn't. For example, Zoe Campos, everybody thought it was foul play. Correct. Andrea Bowman, everybody thought it was foul play. Correct. Tyler North, everybody thought it was foul play. Correct. On the other hand, had something like Crystal Morrison, I even said myself, I think it's foul play. Now, I've learned a lot since then, but there was certainly no signs, there was no evidence to that. Turns out it wasn't foul play. Esther Westenbarger, shady brother, out with friends, or Cadillac goes missing, all these things, not foul play. So when I think about Kevin's, I put his in kind of like that Esther Westenbarger, Crystal Morrison, maybe Robbie Hurt category, in that there's no signs of foul play. Very well could be. But these ones that have been solved that are like that are not foul play. And I know it's a very small sample size, but you have to go by something. So this is kind of where I am with Kevin Nguyen's. It very much feels like those types of, now, of course, we still have some that are up in the air. Tom Brown, Chris Turner. We may never know. But Kevin Nguyen's disappearance feels more to me like a Crystal Morrison, Esther Westenbarger, Robbie Hurt type of situation than a Tyler North, Zoe Campos, Andrea Bowman, Tiffany Johnson situation. So that's what I'm writing about in the blog, just to kind of give you a, even like Eric Franks, even though his body's not been found, being that his car has been, we know what happened there. And everybody thought it was foul play. This is how I, look at these things. Delane says, I just don't think there was a third or fourth return, probably not a second time. Linda, I don't think he would have voluntarily left his glasses, but I don't think he placed the glasses there either. So once again, goes back to, and Julia, I apologize that you got in late to miss some of this. We just don't know his state of mind. Kathy, it's unfortunate that Kevin didn't go to the bar with someone. I've never gone to a bar club by myself. Yeah, Brandy Wells. Yeah. Yep. Those situations don't seem to turn out well, Kathy. All right. So let's go back to this topic of call but no shows. So, we've all heard of the comic no call, no show. People who are supposed to, if you've ever been a manager, somebody's supposed to show up for work. They don't call that they're not coming in. They don't show up and they don't call to say that they're not coming in. Or you've ever been stood up on a date, supposed to meet your date somewhere. You get there at 7:00. Person doesn't show up, doesn't call, doesn't show. You never hear from the person again. This is, I see your, I got your message, Delane. But call, but no show is a thing. Crystal Morrison called for a ride, wasn't there. Deborah Bowman went to the hospital, called for a ride, seemingly wasn't there, although we might be open to some things there. Shane Fell called for his brother to pick him up, not there. What's going on here? I stated it. You heard me say it in the episode. There is no way that when I started Unfound 5 years ago, that you would have told me that after 5 years, of course, I'm surprised we made it to 5 years, but you would have told me 5 years in, 225 disappearances, that we have at least 4 disappearances, and there are probably others maybe that I've missed, but those are the ones that just came to mind, where people called to get picked up. People show up within 20 minutes and the person is gone, never to be seen again. I could have never predicted that. But we have multiples now, not one, at least 4. I kind of put Chance Engelbert's in there too, because he wanted to get a ride, but somebody couldn't come pick him up and then he disappeared. Rebecca Gary, kind of the same thing, because she was going to get a ride to be driven back. And when the person showed up, she wasn't there. Of course, all her luggage and everything were there. So kind of the same thing, but not quite. What is going on with these types of disappearances? Now, I know each one you have to judge it on its own merits. But to me, 4, 5, 6 is a lot. It's a lot. I mean, these aren't as maybe as strange as Dale Kerstetter's, being a security guard and being kidnapped, or maybe he was part of the heist himself. It's not that rare, but it certainly is unusual. Kathy says Shane was drunk, avoiding the checkpoint on the road. Crystal was on methadone. She may have not taken methadone properly and going into withdrawal, sick. Kathy, but in Deborah Bowman's case, Betty's son could have picked her up and harmed her. No proof that Deborah actually left. That's right. I guess, and the thing is, like I said, so once again, anybody has, some ideas, of those 3, Crystal Morrison's, Deborah's, and Shane's, I think the one that has been solved is still the most perplexing of all of them. And that is Crystal's. She calls to be picked up. Guy is going to take 20 minutes, I think it was, to come pick her up. But it was like a 15-minute walk down to that Shell station where she was last seen. So even if she had gone down there and come directly back, she still wouldn't have been there when her ride got there. So it'd be 15 minutes down, 15 minutes back. That's a half hour. The guy's going to be waiting there 10 minutes for her to come back. And we know that, of course, she wasn't found for several years because she was on private property. Of those, that's still the most perplexing. With Deborah Bowman, you kind of start thinking, well, she had some mental issues. She had some physical issues. She had an addiction going on. Anything is possible, including foul play. And I don't think that any of us would be surprised about any of those. With Shane, Goes back to a head injury, and so we can maybe relate that to Kevin's. Shane in a car wreck, Kevin getting in a fight, head injury, walks off. Yeah, at the time he's fine, but with each increasing minute, the brain has the blood in there. It's pushing against the brain, and people die. As you know, I call it the Natasha Richardson effect. But these are just, I guess what I'm saying is we have these different ones, and those disappearances are, besides them calling and no showing, Crystal Morrison, Deborah Bowman, and Shane Fell have nothing in common. They are all totally different situations, except for the fact that somebody was supposed to pick them up. That's what makes it so difficult. And Chance Engelbert's is way different than theirs, and Rebecca Gary's is way different than all theirs. And the reason Rebecca Gary's is a little bit different, it wasn't like she called and the guy was going to pick her up in 20 minutes. I think the thing was that she was going to move back home to be with her daughter, her other family, and he was picking her up the next day. So it wasn't like 20 minutes later. It was like 12 hours, 14 hours later. So, Paula says, I think they tend to get anxious while waiting because of the different circumstances and just walk off. Delane, but not so strange when someone is intoxicated or experiencing mental health or physical health issues. That's true. The issue, though, Delane, even with Deborah Bowman, is that she was calling from a hospital. If she was calling from a crack house, that I guess maybe that would be a little different. Shane Fell after a wreck. A lot of different things are possible. Crystal calling from work. It's just crazy. It's something, and I know we're going to run into them again. And my guess is that missing person will be different than all of these. More studying to do. So, okay. Well, that's all I have for the disappearance of Kevin Nguyen. And so what are we going to be doing this coming Friday? The disappearance of Ashley Simpson. No, not that Ashley Simpson. Ashley Simpson from Salmon Arm, British Columbia. This is one that's going to be put in the category of the man said. She'd been working in Western Canada there. Her father had gone back to Ontario for a break. She decided to stay there with a guy that she met. He had a trailer. They were living together. And then one day they went to a place called Margaret Falls to kind of enjoy the day. Came back allegedly. A friend of this guy said that, yes, Ashley was arguing, I should say, with this guy. The guy owed her money, and she was going to use that money to fly back to Ontario. And she was never seen again. His story, his name is Derek, says that, yes, they got into an argument, and she walked off, and she put her stuff in a pink suitcase and left. Of course, the issue is that nobody in any friends or family of Ashley have ever seen her with it. She had a suitcase because of living there for a while, but it wasn't pink. But probably the most perplexing part of this disappearance is that if you want to be suspicious of this guy, Derek, is that about 3 years later, her ID was found in the septic system of a place 18 hours away. So you will hear about that this coming Friday. The guest will be her mother, Cindy. I did that interview on Friday evening, and She did a great interview. So that will be, so we're going back to Canada. We haven't been to Canada in a while on Unfound, but we are going back there finally for the disappearance of Ashley Simpson. I think this is from 2016. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you all for taking part. Thank you for those of you who took part in last Monday's Unfound on the Ground. And you will see me again on Wednesday for the live show. And between now and then, I go to the dentist tomorrow morning. I go get my annual checkup at the doctor on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I go to see my sports psychologist. I go there every other week. So I got a lot to do. I'm going to be seeing a different part of my body and mentality over the next 3 days. So, Linda, who do you, well, Linda, as far as episode suggestions, here's what's going to help your cause, Linda. If you actually know somebody in the family or something like that, trust me, we get enough case suggestions. But what can surely move a disappearance up to the front of the line is if when somebody sends the information to me or my assistant, Emily, that they already have contact information, they know somebody, something like that. So I just want to warn you right now, if it's just going to be a episode suggestion because it's near where you live or something like that, it's going to get put in a very, very large stack. However, if you have information or something like that that can help us ease into it and make it easier for us to kind of start putting the information together, then it has much better chance of becoming an episode. Because I get all sorts of case suggestions. That's all I have. See you all Wednesday night, where I will once again talk about Katie Lancaster and her passing yesterday. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your support. And thank you for all your great mental ability. Good night.